Hey everybody, it's Steve Lowell here. Welcome to our live this week. As usual, we are broadcasting across multiple platforms today, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and we hope you get a chance to join us on one of those. So we're just going to give a few seconds for some people to join us because I have to tell you, I'm really excited about today's topic. We're going to talk today about how you can get a prospect to go from I'll think about it to where do I sign? And I'll tell you, it took us a long time to learn these particular skills because my wife Jane and I, as some of you know, we spent the last number of years pre-COVID traveling the world doing events and generating business from live events. And sort of the strategy would be this: we would do an event in different cities all around the country and indeed around the world. But when we first started, what we would do is we would do these events and then we would try and make sales from the platform. And we did some of that, and some of it worked out well, and we had some good success with that, but we didn't really get where we wanted to go, right? So then we started doing this. We started doing the events and then meeting people, having individual sales conversations after the events. And that didn't really go so well. We were really struggling with how are we going to actually get these sales to be made? And we had some success, but not what we really wanted. But then what happened over time was we started changing little pieces here and there and adding pieces in and refining some pieces. And I actually reached back to my former world where I was a high pressure sales guy, and brought in some of those skills and took the pressure out of them. And we built this system that we call the perfect sales system. And what we ended up doing was closing a lot more of those individual calls. So we would do the events and then we would meet with people one-on-one, and we became very good at walking them through a very specific system that would lead them to a decision, a buying decision. And so over the years, we've sort of mastered that approach. And what we found is every time we follow that system, our closing percentage is really high. But then every now and then, for whatever reason, we would get away from the system. We would step out, or we try to improve it, or we'd change something and the closing percentage would drop. And then we'd go back to the system and the closing percentage would elevate again. And so what I'm going to share with you today is a tiny little piece of what we call the perfect sales system. Because the perfect sales system is a much bigger process and has got many steps and components and strategies and concepts and skills associated with it. So with these live sessions that we're doing today and that we've been doing for the past few weeks, I'm sharing tiny little pieces of the perfect sales system. And today I want to talk to you about what I call the sales conversation flow. And I'm just going to give you the very basics of some of those steps that we follow in the sales conversation flow. And I want to explain why they work and how using some of these skills and understanding how to really deploy them can help you get your prospects from, I'm not ready, or I have to think about it, to where do I sign? So what I'm going to share with you are a couple of fundamental basic principles that we use in our sales conversation flow. And these are principles which, if you study them and if you learn how to implement them, and if you learn the rest of the system that's wrapped around what I'm going to share with you today, it can really have a profound effect on your closing percentages. Whether you're a coach, a speaker, a consultant, an expert, a thought leader, if you're somebody for whom sales is important, if sales is a high priority for you, then these concepts today are going to help you. And then I'm going to share with you some exciting news, something we have coming up in the near future that can really help you take what we're going to talk about today to the next level. So let's start talking about what we call the sales conversation flow. Here's what it is. When you get in front of a prospect, there are certain things that really need to happen in a certain order and in a certain way in order for you to have a highest chance of getting that prospect to say, where do I sign? I'll sign up. And what I'm going to share with you has taken years and years and years of research and practice But here's the thing. I'm going to also show you some of the most common mistakes that I see people make during that conversation. And I know these mistakes because I've made them a million times, and I watch people make them, and I don't want you to make them anymore. And again, I want to reiterate, what I'm sharing with you today will help you, but it is very, very tip of the iceberg. It is a first step into crafting what we call the perfect sales system that will continually and consistently increase your closing percentage. Okay, let's talk about the perfect sales system, the conversation flow, the sales conversation flow. I'm going to share some slides with you and walk you through a few of these key principles, and we'll talk about them along the way. So I'm going to bring up the first principles of the sales conversation flow, and it's this. There are a number of principles here. The first is what I call the inquiry. Now, the inquiry is this. The inquiry is where you are going to spend time with the prospect, and you need to ask a series of very specific targeted questions for you to find out very specific information. And so in the perfect sales system, we share with you what exactly are those questions that you need to ask to get the information that you need in order to take that prospect by the hand and walk them to a yes decision. So some of the inquiry fundamentals are these. You need to know some of these things. You need to know, for example, is this prospect even qualified to be a customer for you? And you need to know, what are those qualifications? You should have an idea of, where does this prospect sit in terms of their level of interest? And so are they, just kicking the tires, or are they really serious about maybe hiring you or buying from you? And that can be a hard determination to guess. So you need to be able to find out that. And there's a whole bunch of things you need to know about the prospect before you take them to the next stage. So what you want to do is you want to go through your concepts, whatever it is you're selling, and you need to ask yourself these questions. What do I need to know about my prospect in order to make the sale? And then your inquiry questions are going to be based on those answers. So that's number one, is the inquiry. Let's go to step number two. The second piece of the sales conversation flow is understanding needs versus wants. And I see salespeople, coaches, especially coaches, consultants, and experts so often really struggle with this. They struggle with the difference between a need and a want. And basically, here's the concept. A need is an emotional thing, a want is an emotional thing. A need is a mechanical thing. And so what you want to decide is, when you're speaking with that prospect and you're taking them through the inquiry stage, and then you start talking about what they need versus what they want, you need to be able to distinguish between the two. And the reason you need to be able to distinguish between the two is because later on in the conversation, you're going to present something that addresses both. And you need to present them in the right order and the right way, so that both the prospect's needs and the prospect's wants are properly serviced. So understanding the difference between needs and wants is mission critical for you to really elevate your sales. Okay, let's go to number three. The third piece of the sales conversation flow is what I call paraphrase and confirm. Now, understand again that these pieces that I'm sharing with you of the conversation flow, these are condensed, right? I'm showing you just a summary here. The reality is that you need to dig into each one of these principles and find out the details about what they mean, how they're executed, and why they're important. But here's the paraphrase and confirm piece. What this is for is, after you have put the prospect through the inquiry stage, after you have determined that they're qualified and where they're coming from and all of those things, and you've established the needs and the wants, what you want to do is you want to paraphrase for them. So what I heard you say is, and then give them everything that the prospect said to you, and you want to confirm, is there anything else? The reason we do this is because we need to understand exactly what the prospect needs and what the prospect wants. And we don't want to leave sort of any gas in their tank as we go further into this process. We need to fully understand what their journey is. So paraphrasing and confirming will help you with that. All right, let's go to the next general step in the process. The next general step in the sales conversation flow is authority status, claiming authority status. Now, claiming authority status, here's what that means. It means that you need to do the right things so that that prospect sees you not as just another option, not as just another coach or just another consultant or just another expert, but the prospect needs to see you as the authority in your field. You are what I call the one. And there's multiple things that need to happen in order for you to position yourself as the authority. And I'm going to share with you in a moment what the biggest mistake is that people use to really blow this one. So I'm going to show you what happens there. But putting yourself in the mind or in the position of an authority in the mind of your prospect means this. It means that you need to understand their situation better than they do. It means that you need to provide them with something that rattles their beliefs a little bit, something that changes their perspective. You need to get your prospect to kind of do this. They need to go, you know, I've never heard it quite like that before. No wonder I'm having trouble. And this is where so many people really screw up this part, because what we do is we start talking about our credentials, right? I've been in the business this long and I've got this many books and I've done this and I've experienced that and all of this stuff that we think is important to the prospect. And we confuse that as claiming authority. And claiming the position of authority is not about your expertise or your experience or all of those things. Claiming authority is about helping the client or the prospect understand that you know more about their condition or about their problem or about their situation than they do. Now, for us, we use a concept that I call expert insights, which is part of the perfect sales system. And for that, there's a series of models that we develop and we lay it out before the prospect where we basically say, listen, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, this is a snapshot of your world and this is where you're having problems. And the prospect goes, I've never seen that before. No wonder I can't get to where I want to go. And so that's the concept that we call expert insights. And it's all part of the perfect sales system. So one of the questions you want to ask yourself here is, how can I show something to my prospect that changes their perspective? What can I demonstrate to my prospect that reveals a unique understanding that I have about my prospect's world from a perspective they have never considered before? Which means you want your prospect kind of going, this is new information for me. I've never heard this before. That's how you claim authority. Okay, let's go to the next step in the sales conversation flow. The next one is what I call presenting options. Now, again, I speak to so many coaches and consultants and I ask them questions like, so how do you do what you do? How do clients work with you? And so many of them, especially consultants, they'll say, well, they hire me and I go work with them and they don't have options. And the reason why we need to have options, there's many reasons, but one reason we need to have options is because we use options as an assessment tool to define the prospect's level of interest. And so when we do this, when we have a prospect, what we'll do is we'll say there are 3 different ways that we can work together. This way, or this way. And those different ways have different price points. And what we do is we just ask the prospect, where do you see yourself in there? Their answer is going to help us determine the next step in the conversation. Here's what happens when we struggle with the options, or if we don't have options, or if the options are not varied enough. What happens is we're basically in the mind of the prospect only giving them one direction to go. And that makes it either a yes or a no situation. But with options, and if they're set up properly and explained well, then what happens is your prospect can look across a spectrum of opportunities and they can indicate to you where they land. Very, very powerful. Okay, so that's options. Let's go to the final step that we're going to talk about today. The final step we're talking about today is your solution. And now this is another spot where so many coaches and consultants really struggle, because what we want to do is we want to give our solution right off the top. And what happens is our prospects come to us and we say, how can I help? And they say, I need this. And we say, I have that. And now what happens is we put ourselves in a competitive situation where we're now competing against everybody else who does the exact same process. I did this for a really long time. When I stepped out of the sales conversation flow, I got to this position where I thought, well, everybody knows who I am. My prospect knows who I am. I'm just going to tell them how I can help them, and we're good. But we weren't good, because I was positioning myself as just another coach, just another speaker, just another consultant. Okay. So I want to review these steps again very quickly, but this time I want to share with you the biggest mistake that I see people make when executing these steps in the sales conversation flow. All right, so let's go back to the slides. And we're going to start with the biggest mistake with the inquiry. Remember, the inquiry is the stage where you're going to be asking the prospect very targeted questions in order to get very specific information. It's the information that you need to know in order to make the sale. And here's the biggest mistake that I see is jumping in too early with your solution. We get excited when a prospect comes to us and says, look, Steve, I've got this issue. I want to accomplish this thing. And we say, oh, I can help you do that. When we jump in too early with the solution, all we're doing is positioning ourselves in exactly the same place as every other coach or consultant. Okay, let's take a look at the next most common mistake that I see. The next mistake is with the wants versus needs step, which is our second step that we're explaining today. Understanding the difference between wants and needs, and the biggest mistake is not knowing the difference between wants and needs. You need to understand that your prospect does not know the difference between wants and needs. They will come and tell you what they want. They will come and tell you what they need or what they think they need, and they get those two words confused because they don't really need to know the difference. They just know what they want, or they think they know what they need. But you as an expert, you need to be able to distinguish what do they want and what do they need. Because oftentimes a prospect will come to you and they'll say, this is what I want, and you will give it to them, or you will try and sell it to them, but it's not actually what they need. Or sometimes what we'll do is the exact opposite. We will try and sell them into something that we know they need, but it doesn't align with what they want. And so we need to know the difference. Not knowing the difference between wants and needs is a massive mistake that will dramatically lower your closing percentage. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. The next one is about the paraphrase and confirm. And the biggest mistake there that I see is moving ahead before you draw all the information out of the prospect. And so paraphrase and confirm is about saying to the prospect, I heard you say this. Is that all there is, or is there more? And it gives the prospect an opportunity to confirm, no, that's all. Or they will say, oh, here's this other thing. Well, now that you mention it, here's this other thing. Because here's what happens. If we don't paraphrase and confirm, all those other things that they're not telling you, that's ammunition they now have, and they will reveal that ammunition in the form of an objection. So the paraphrasing and confirming is really about getting everything out of the tank for two reasons. One, so that you can best position yourself to serve that prospect. And number two is to remove, or at least substantially reduce, the chances of having surprise objections at the end. So paraphrase and confirm. Biggest mistake is moving forward without actually doing it. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next biggest mistake we see is in the authority status level. And the authority status mistake is trying to claim authority status with your credentials. We see this so often. And folks, I got to tell you, this is a big, huge, colossal mistake, because when you are trying to convince your prospect or an audience that you are the one, that you're the one that they should hire, when you're trying to convince them by using your credentials, I've done this and I've got this, this experience and this training and all of these things. When you're using your credentials as the differentiator, then what you're doing is not claiming authority. Now understand this, there is a time for your credentials. There is a time for all of those things. And the time is not when you're closing the sale. The time for those things is not when you're trying to close the sale. You need to understand, when do those things come into play? And that decision, that knowledge is all part of that perfect sales system. When do you use your credentials? I use my credentials all the time. I'm the president of the Global Speakers Federation, and I'm an award-winning speaker and a global speaker and all of those cool things. 35 years in the business, two-time multiple, international best-selling author. Like I've got all those credentials, but people are not going to hire me because of those credentials. Those credentials do not put me in authority position. So now I know how to use those credentials in order to establish credibility, but not to claim authority. And they never, ever, ever come up in the sales conversation flow. They come up at other times. And part of the perfect sales system is understanding where you use the credentials and where you avoid them like the plague. Okay? So the biggest mistake that we see is when you're trying to claim authority status, positioning yourself as the number one choice, using your credentials to do so is the mistake. Let's keep going. We're getting down close to the last couple here. So the next one now happens in the, in the options stage. Now the options, the biggest issue with options is not providing any, okay? You need to be able to provide general options. So this allows you to evaluate the prospect's level of interest, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. If you don't have options in your program right now, if you can't say there are 3 different ways that we can work together, and there's magic in the number 3. In everything, there's magic in the number 3. So I recommend 3 options. 3 different options that are profoundly different experiences, profoundly different price points, so that your prospect has an opportunity to indicate to you where their mind is at. Okay. Now let's move right along. We're getting there. The next big mistake that we see is in the solution stage. And the mistake at the solution stage is not waiting until this point to share your solution. That's mistake number 1. There's actually 2 here. Not waiting until this point is a big one. Giving the options way too early is a mistake. And then the second part of this is giving way too much information. And what we've found is that when we get lost in the details and we tell the prospect all the different things that are going to happen and all the different ways it's going to work and all the different dates and all the different options and all the different outcomes and all the different features and all the different benefits, their head explodes and they can't make a decision. Is there a time for all that detail? Absolutely there is, but not when you're trying to close the sale. So you need to know, when do you include those details? When do you give them all the information? And that is part of the perfect sales system. So what we've talked about today, just a very quick review, are some of the steps in the perfect sales system. And those steps are these. Number 1, inquiry, learning how to ask the questions to get the information you need in order to properly close the sale. Number 2, understand the differences between wants and needs. Number 3, paraphrasing and confirming in order to make sure that you have everything that's on the prospect's mind. Number 4 is authority status, not by using your credentials, but by using something that I call expert insights, providing options so that you can get a good idea of where the customer is thinking of playing at, and providing the solution the right way at the right time. Now, if you can at least understand those concepts, and then we're going to give you the option to learn much more about how do you actually deploy those, but those concepts are going to help you to at least begin the process of understanding the sales conversation a little bit deeper. Now, I want to take you through something we have coming up in the very near future, very exciting, and some of you are going to want to take advantage of this, and it's called the Perfect Sales System Intensive. And it's a virtual training program. It happens next week. It's 1 week from today. It's August 30th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And it's all online. And you can find out all the details at stevelowell.com/events. But here's what's involved in this program. You're basically going to discover the keys to unlock the perfect sales system, to get your business off to the races and start driving sales. Now, you'll notice that RACES is an acronym, and the acronym is the keys to the perfect sales system. And we're going to reveal to you what that system is and what these keys are. It's a virtual experience, and it's for you if sales are your number one priority. So let's talk about what you're going to be able to do at the end of this event. At the end of this event, you're going to be able to know 3 major things, very powerful things. We call them secrets. Number 1 is how to ethically get more people to want to give you more money instead of giving it to your competitors. Now, of course, what that means is you're going to know how to use the perfect sales system in order to close more sales, increase your closing percentage, and basically make more money. You're going to learn the secret of how to copy our entire sales strategy and make it your very own. We're going to show you how you can get the tools to copy exactly what we do that have built a global business all around the world. And you're going to be able to understand how to get those concepts and make them your own. And you're going to know how to make money right away, no matter how busy you are with other things. So what that means is we often hear people say, oh, Steve, this is great. I want to implement this system. I'm just going to finish writing my book first. I'm working on my website. I'm just going to update my website first. I'm working with a coach. As soon as that's done, I'm going to implement this system. Well, we're going to show you how you can start using the perfect sales system right away to start generating pretty much immediate revenue and immediate cash flow. So that is the Perfect Sales System Intensive. Now, here's how this works. It's a $97 deposit. So what that means is you pay $97 to hold your seat. And then at the end of the session, for everybody who stays for the whole session, we're going to give you your $97 back. So it turns out to be a free event for you. There's absolutely no risk. You pay the $97 to hold the seat, and at the end of the session, we give you your $97 back, provided you stay for the whole thing. So that's August 30th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You can find out more at steve@stevelowell.com/events, or type the word interested in the chat window on whatever platform you're watching this, and one of our team members will reach out to you and answer all of your questions and get you registered if it's the right place for you. So folks, I hope you had a good time today. I hope this was of value to you. I encourage you to watch this video a number of times, go through these principles in the sales conversation flow, get yourself signed up for the Perfect Sales System Intensive 1 week from today on August 30th. And we are going to reveal to you the keys to the perfect sales system. So as a coach, consultant, speaker, expert, thought leader, you can start making more sales. That's a wrap for today, everybody. Thanks for dropping by. We'll see you again in a couple of days, I'm sure.